This is Joshua Roman, one of, in my opinion, the world's most extraordinary cellists. Josh, do you want to share a little story about you and what's going on with you?
Yes. Thank you, Keith. So, as you said, I'm Joshua. I played the cello. What you just heard was the prelude from Johann Sebastian Bach's first suite for solo cello. And I like to think of it, it's become the way that I say hello. It's the cello hello. But I'm here today. I'm very happy to be here today. 2.5 years ago, I was facing the possibility of never playing this beautiful music again. The music that's been with me since as long as I can remember. I started playing the cello when I was 3. It's my profession. I travel the world, mostly the States, playing as a featured soloist with orchestras, collaborating with artists across all genres, doing things, generally anything that I find interesting and meaningful, chasing connection with people through music. But in January of 2021, I got COVID, and unfortunately, I never got better. To this day, I have long COVID. Symptoms include a condition called dysautonomia, which deregulates my body's reaction to stimuli. So sometimes I'll start shaking because I get really cold. I have constant trembling that I now take medication for. And I have trouble processing. So even right now, I think I'm experiencing just a tiny bit of that. Finding words can be an issue. I can't read. I even had to stop driving because my body would literally shut down because it can't handle that much processing. I don't go to the grocery store, et cetera, et cetera. So you can imagine being a performer on stage with halls of 2,000, 2,500 people, an orchestra behind me. Not a good thing to be trembling and possibly not able to physically continue performing. I had a big moment of doubt about whether I should continue, but in that moment of doubt, I faced questions that I'd been avoiding for years about why I played the cello. And when some friends asked me to play for a summer solstice party, I said yes, and I finally opened the case after having let it sit shut for over 2 months. For almost 3 months, I had not touched the cello. I think it's the longest I'd ever gone with something like that. And the day before the party, I really wanted to cancel, but I felt guilty, so I didn't. I pulled out the cello. Should have done it a week before that to get used to, fingers, they don't keep that. So pulled it out the day before, and I started playing the notes, same notes that you just heard me playing. And I was absolutely overcome with emotion. I broke down. I hadn't realized how much I needed the cello. But it wasn't just something for other people. I'd been viewing it as a vessel through which I could give my service, but I'd been cutting myself out of the equation. So that turned things around, and ever since then, I have been focused on how vulnerability helps me connect to what's most important, helps me prioritize things in my life and in my art, helps me focus on what's unique to me, what I can give to other people that matters to me. And that's why I play the cello. So in that spirit, I'm going to share something with you that I had started before the pandemic, but this is something cellists don't usually do. It's kind of going out on a limb a bit. And it's become a part of my practice now to go out on a limb, to do the things that make me nervous because they matter to me, put me in a position where things could go wrong, fight the perfectionist, while acknowledging the drive that comes from that all at the same time. So with that, here's another selection to welcome you to this space.
Well, I heard that there's a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? Well, it goes like this: the fourth and the fifth, the minor fall and the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, 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 Your faith was strong, but you needed proof. I saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty and the moonlight overthrew ya. She tied you to her kitchen chair, broke your throat and she cut your hair, and from your lips she drew the hallelujah, 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 You say I took the name in vain. Well, I don't even know the name, but if I did, well, really, what's it to you? There's a blaze of light in every word. It doesn't matter which you heard. The holy or the broken heart.
So that minute, when did it happen to you? When did you realize that your life is a precious thing? It's happened to be a couple times in my life. The most recent time, I was alone on a work trip, and I thought I was losing my mind. I would look out the window, and the sounds on the street and what I was hearing didn't match. And I started to get disconnected from this earth and this planet, and I thought I was having another stroke. I couldn't tell whether it was my right lobe or my left lobe, but something was short-circuiting, and I knew I had to get myself to a hospital. An ambulance would be called, and I had that panic moment of like, I can't reach my husband. I don't know where my kids, Miles and Coco, are, and so I did what you do, is just you pick up your iPhone and you turn on a recorder and you try to leave a message, just because if something happens to you, you want to know, you want people to know that they love you and that you love them. And it was, Miles and Coco, this is Dad. Something is really going on with my brain. And I am going to go to the hospital, and maybe it's all going to be fine. And it's going to be okay, or maybe it's not. And I want you to know that you're enough, you're glorious, you're amazing, and you're going to have an extraordinary life. I turned off the phone, and I went to the hospital. Clearly I didn't die. And clearly I only lost my mind a little bit. So what was your moment? You know, who have you lost? Where have you been? A divorce? A failure? Something that didn't go right for you? What was that moment where you realized you were fully awake and fully alive to this precious thing? Or maybe it was something super joyful. Maybe it was the birth of a child, or a new love, or an amazing promotion, or an extraordinary project, or an opportunity that you could never think would come your way. It's when this becomes true. We are all artists. And what I mean by that is we are born with something innate and deep and profound. We're awake and alive to the world, and more than that, we're open to the hope of what can be. I'll promise I'm not going to cry through this entire presentation. You know, I was walking down the street in my house in California, and I passed by a neighbor, and in that kind of neighborly way, she waves, and she says, "Hey neighbor, so how you doing in this fine poly crisis?" And woo, isn't that true? I mean, if we really think about what's going on right now, so much is coming at us, whether it's long COVID, whether it's racism, whether it's this economy, whether it's the political divide. We can go on forever and ever and ever and name them. And this too also reminds us we are all artists, because we need to be. We need imagination about what comes next for ourselves. We need imagination of what comes next for our friends. We need imagination about what comes next for our families, our towns, our states, our nation. And so welcome to this talk together, because this is our thesis. This is our topic of today, is if indeed we are all artists, how do we live up to that universe-given talent?
If you had met me as a kid, chances are you would have found me in the water. A swimming pool, a lake, my feet tucked in a diving ring, long hair floating all around me, playing mermaid. I was a dreamy kid. I liked to dive deep in my imagination, read stories and write poems. A couple of years after my father died in a really tragic accident, I found myself feeling sad, like really having a hard time shaking the feeling that the world was not a safe place. In class one day, I scribbled a poem on the back of my notebook.
What was that, Deb?
Why must we look at things the way that we do? We smile and hide the pain we're going through. They say love hurts if it's true. But if we can't share our heartaches and pain, are we really in love or pretending in vain? Go easy. I was 11. I deeply believed all poetry needed to rhyme. My teacher, Mr. Wetherington, spied what I had written over my shoulder, and then he said something to me that touched me really deeply. He said, Deb, you're a poet. And then he proceeded to read my poem to the whole class. And I felt in that moment a crazy mix of feelings. I felt at once super excited and proud, and also incredibly visible and vulnerable. You know, my father's death ushered in a whole knock-on set of consequences in my life, traumas big and small, that started to teach me that the world is not always a safe place for mermaids. And so I began the very serious business of figuring out what I thought was the key to being the right kind of person, the right kind of kid, the right kind of student, the right kind of worker, leader, the right kind of me. And I got a little off track. Keith, why don't you tell us a little bit about one of your first experiences with creativity?
First grade, teacher comes in and she says, we're all going to do a drawing for a drawing competition. So pick something you really are fascinated by and use a ton of color. And this is what I drew. I was really interested in two things at the time, horses and fashion. There were some giveaways early. A horse and plaid pants. And I distinctly remember my teacher saying, but Keith, horses don't have plaid pants. And I said, if you wanted a photo, it would be a photo competition. Okay, so I entered this, and I don't know who the jury was, but I won the competition that year. Because horses do have plaid pants, right? I mean, they do. But I think this is a story a little bit about our origins with creativity and what happens when you are seen and you are visible. And I pray and I am thankful to the universe that first introduction to creativity, I incorporated it into who I am. And I've had a 30-year career of being a creative human.
Thanks, Keith. All right. Well, you've met Joshua, you've met Keith, you've met me. We would like to make a little room in this conversation for the artist in you. So when you came in, you may have found in your seat this toolkit. It looks like this.
Everyone online, you should have had an email, or in the text stream right now, we are putting a link for you to be able to do a PDF.
So this is our gift to you, along with the pencil. And if you would, could you turn to this page?
Yes, absolutely.
Turn to this page.
Pull out your pencil, your pen at home, and turn to this page.
So we've put together for you a reflection. And what we'd love you to spend just a few minutes on is thinking about a time in your life when you first experienced yourself as creative. We want you to be gentle with the definition of what creative is. I mean, don't be too tight about the word artist. Kate and I were at a dinner the other night, and we were talking to a good friend who said, me, I'm not creative. Nope, that's not for me. But as we explored the conversation, she recalled an experience of herself as a tiny person sitting in church, surrounded by the beauty of the organ and the smell of the incense and stained glass light all around the floor, and singing with the choir. Didn't matter if she was hitting all the notes. You could see, as she recalled it, herself being transported into a part of herself that deeply connects with creativity and self-expression. We're inviting you to do the same. Find an early story when you really felt connected to who you are as a person who can feel and create and express. We're going to take a few minutes here, fill out the reflection tool. You might, remember doing something like this when you were much younger. You can fill this out, and then we're going to talk about it in just a few minutes.
And if you're joining on live stream, there's a PDF that was given to you. You could also just jot down your notes on a piece of paper if you can't write on that or don't have any means to print it out. But just try to capture your ideas. We're going to do a rare thing here in New York City and give you a little silence to do the work in. If you're on live stream and you're like, what is going on? It's everyone is doing work, and hopefully you're doing a little bit of work as well around this, and not PowerPoint. I also just wanted to note that this toolkit that you received either as a PDF or here in person is meant to be used at your studio at home. You can rip it apart, post it on the wall. There are posters in it. And then also there's a little QR code of inspiration for each page. So when you get it home, feel free to load up that QR code and it will help you understand the work that you're doing, help inspire you forward. Tina, maybe if it's possible, we can send an email out for anyone who wants a physical copy of this mailed to you. We would be happy to mail you a physical copy of, since we had to do a venue change today. I'm looking at my dear friend Jack Saul over there, who has 2 more blanks. So I am going to give you just 20 seconds to finish up here. And not just Jack, Jack's keeping the pace here, metronome. So just take a pause for a moment and look at what you have written. And this is obviously something you can continue to revisit later. but we can learn a lot from what happened to the artist inside us between whenever that story happened and today. What happened to that imaginative, creative, generative, expansive soul? So some of us are way over here where we love that feeling of being creative. It felt really in touch with the universe. We felt really at home in the practice. We got some credit for it. We got maybe built it into our steam. Way over here, some of you were like, I can't think of a story. Or my definition of artist is very specific and that's not me. Or maybe you were creative and somewhere along the way, your parents, your classmates, your teammates, your teachers, your parents, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles somehow shamed you for your creativity. Most of us are in the vast middle, where some days we nourish our inner artist and some days we starve that inner artist. Think about what happened to you from that story to today. Do a little stretch and talk to your neighbor here and just share your story. I'm going to give you just, minute and a half. So just turn to your partner. And for those of you on live stream, think for a moment about what happened to you since that story happened until today. What happened to that artist? And put it in the chat on YouTube. For those in the room, I'm going to invite you to switch.
It's time to switch. If you haven't started taking turns yet, it'll be a great time to switch. thank you so much for sharing that story and bringing to this room the artist within. You know, I don't think it's uncommon for us to get separated from the artist within, and sometimes the turf can be pretty rough in there. I think it's easy to be separated from our creativity, and sometimes when we're hard on that inner artist, it has a huge toll on who we are in the world, in our bodies, in our brains, in our hearts, and in our ability to create the impact we want to create. For me, it was hard to take the artist's journey. I wonder what it was like for you. What blocks you from harnessing your most creative energy, your most creative self-expression? The training I got in that space started with a feeling of unsafety. It was very personal. And long ago in my past, I felt visible and vulnerable and not particularly safe to express myself and be the kind of dreamy kid I was. I also felt a little bit disloyal, engaging in super creative acts or being interested in certain kinds of the things that I was interested in were maybe outside of the cultural context I was growing up in, and certainly outside of the kinds of expectations some of the adults in my life had for me around being disciplined, analytical, a good achievement-oriented student, predictable, on time, that sort of thing. As a result, there were some really practical considerations for me, things like livelihood and money. I'm sure that's not an issue for anyone here, but for me it was important. And so I set about the serious work of constructing a corporate career where I could do work that I was quite proud of and quite integrative of many of my values. It allowed me to express myself in certain ways, and I got a lot of esteem out of that. And when I think about stepping into a much more creative career, I wonder, am I putting all that at risk? What would it actually mean to my sense of responsibility to the people in my life? Would I still be being the kind of wife and mother and sister and daughter that I promised to be? Of course, there are some messages from our friendly sponsors, patriarchy, capitalism, and white supremacy. They talk to me sometimes and ask me questions like, who in the world would be interested in your personal life story? Why is that relevant to the world? There are practical concerns like time. I mean, between being a wife, a mother, a sister, a friend, a leader, who has time to even be, much less be creative? And I think all of that kind of wraps up in this sort of question that I ask myself sometimes, which is, even if I did it, do I have the personal capability or maybe the sense of my own self-worth to live out of this artistic sensibility, this creative sense of who I am? All right. Well, as you might imagine, this might be a time for you to have a similar kind of reflection. If we go back to our tool, you'll find somewhere in the back half of it this very map. What we would love to do is make it possible for you to think about what gets in your way. And we're going to do this in a little bit shorter snack. I've been thinking about this map for a long time. I've been working on it for a long time. So please don't feel like you have to fill out every box. We're just looking to capture what is getting in the way of your creative self-expression. Maybe it's personal things, ideas, feelings, defenses, needs. Maybe it's something between you and others, things that come out of your relationships with friends, family members, co-workers. Maybe it's all around us, things like social expectations or messages you get from the larger systems and institutions in our world. Maybe it's something from your long ago past, something that's really bothering you right now, or something that's calling to you from the future. We'd just love you to spend a minute there and consider, what are the promises I made to be a certain way or do a certain thing that are getting in my way now? Maybe some of those promises have outlived their usefulness. Let's capture as much as we can. We'll spend about a minute here, and then we'll come back.
Those of you at home or on live stream from wherever you are, this was sent to you both as a single page that you could print out and draw on. And it's also part of an integrated set of tools.
All right, let's come back. Just a snack. Again, we designed this toolkit to be something you could come back to again and again if you find it useful. But just take a quick look at what you're discovering there. Just take a quick look at what you see as you look at that map. Maybe there's another way. Is there something there you would consider letting go of? Something that might have outlived its welcome? And as we listen to what comes next, just consider what's beckoning you.
It's beckoning in a very quiet kind of way, isn't it? There we go.
Softly.
Just beyond yourself. Just beyond yourself. Just beyond yourself. It's where you need to be. Half a step into self-forgetting, and the rest restored by what you'll meet. There's a road always beckoning. There's a road always beckoning when you see the two sides of it closing together at that far horizon. And deep in the foundations of your own heart at exactly the same time. That's how you know it's where you have to go. That's how you know it's the road you have to follow. That's how you know. That's how you know. It's just beyond yourself. It's where you need to be.
Thank you, David White, for that compelling question, that beautiful, beautiful question. So maybe you're feeling it. Maybe you are really starting to feel the inner artist, feeling welcome, things you're willing to let go of. Maybe you're feeling a little skeptical right now. Either way, it's okay. Because guess what? Science doesn't care. In their brilliant exploration of the neuroscience of aesthetics, Susan Magsamen and Ivy Ross have uncovered and illuminated the most recent neuroscience and evolutionary biology research that shows us how our bodies and brains have been designed over millions of years to witness and experience art and be forever changed by it. Your senses are designed to help you experience the world, make meaning of it. Thank you. Experience the world and make meaning of it and share it with others in a way that transforms your own brain and the brain of everyone around you. So consider for a minute how we felt when we first heard Joshua playing, the way the notes of the cello affected your body, this feeling when your own voice started to rise in hallelujah. Or maybe for you, it was the last time you were driving in the car and you heard a song on the radio and it made your throat clutch, tears ran down your face. Or maybe you were in a movie and you cheered for the hero or found yourself laughing out loud. Read a book and chased to the end because you couldn't wait, literally, to find out what was happening. That happens because whether you use the word artist or not, our ability to appreciate, witness, and be changed by art is innate. It's how we're designed. It is, in fact, one of the major forces of neuroplasticity that change the shape of our brains and allow us to be something different, think in a different way, experience the world in a new way. It's actually part of being human. It is the thing that distinguishes us from all other species. Art heals us. There are countless studies that tell us that just coloring for 20 minutes can markedly reduce our levels of cortisol, that using art in the context of treating trauma can reduce the severity, frequency, and intensity of symptoms. It teaches us, it helps us learn more quickly, it aids in our social and emotional development. And that's true not only for kids, but for adults as well. Ask anyone in this room who's ever designed a leadership training. When you invite art into the room, our ability to build bridges and connect, make new divergent associations and create innovation and new ideas is incredibly aided by art. It connects us. It helps us build bridges across communities. Look, we didn't even invent the word art until the 14th century. Before, it was just being human. To be an artist is to stand in your full humanity. And that's true because the ability to witness, experience, make, and create art is innate within you. Before we had beds, we had art. Before we had solutions to world peace, we had art. In the deepest times of war, we wrote symphonies and beautiful novels and poems. We have art in sorrow to hold us up. We have art in joy to express who we are and help us see it and live into it more fully. We have art in protest to inspire and challenge us to do better, to raise the level of our game and be a better citizen, because we can. Being an artist is what it means to be a human being. We are all artists because every one of us, in every minute we live our life, is completing a creative act.
So, let me make some music. Okay, let's do it. Think for just a minute. Feel for just a minute. Yeah, I mean, it's like, think about this invitation from the universe to be creative and all the things that go up here that prevent you from accepting that invitation. You know, I could do it later. I've got 17 minutes. I don't have the time. I can postpone the joy. I can do it later. Think about what the artists tell us in response to that question. Just soak it in for just a minute. I mean, maybe I just need to play small. I don't want to get noticed. I want to be so vulnerable. I don't want to be seen. I'm going to get made fun of. I can't do this. God, the gap between me and who I want to be is just too big. I mean, I don't really know where to start. I mean, this whole creativity thing, this whole artist thing, this whole, like, I just, no, I I'm not an artist. I mean, like, I don't draw, I don't paint, I don't sculpt. So if that's what it means to be an artist, then I ain't your guy. I'm just not worthy. I mean, does one person really make any difference? Welcome.
So I guess you know by now that I tried to leave my mermaid behind. Many years later, after a 10-year battle with infertility, 9 cycles of Clomid, 3 IVF, 2 miscarriages, somewhere in there, my husband, dear, dear husband, and I found ourselves 17 weeks into what we thought was a successful pregnancy. Sure, said the doctors, go to France. It's probably the last good vacation you're going to get for a while. So we went. And then something terrible happened. I lost that baby in the Louvre. I spent all night in a French hospital delivering what was left of her body, my hope, my everything. We were not able to fly home for 3 days. And by the grace of my husband's great judgment and God, I found myself at the Musée de l'Orangerie. I was sitting in front of the water lilies. You know, some people shop for art like they're shopping for the right feeling. And I saw a lot of that over the course of the time I sat there and mourned. I saw lovers walking by, holding hands, giggling and flirting. I saw students studying. I saw all flavors. Monet painted these paintings toward the end of his life. He painted them in huge relief. He had bought all these plants and flowers and this beautiful Japanese bridge and put it in the heart of his garden at Giverny. He created this beautiful place and he painted them obsessively. He painted them so hugely because he was having trouble seeing. He was losing his eyesight. And if you sit in front of this painting long enough, you can actually begin to feel it wrap around you. You can feel yourself begin to float in the water. In all that sadness and all that fading light, Monet himself was mourning. He was mourning the death of his wife. He was mourning a war in which many, many young men were dying. He was mourning the loss of his own eyesight. I mean, who knows? He could have been mourning many other things. But in that fading light, he found beauty, and he distilled it, and he gave it to France, who put it in a museum and left it there for me to discover and sit for 3 days and try to find my way back to the surface. I don't know if I had ever felt so alone in my life. And I mean, yes, my husband was there and he was mourning with me. But I think there's a special kind of loneliness that happens in your body when you lose a baby. It echoes and calls for you and aches in a really different way. As I sat there contemplating what to make of my life, if I wasn't going to have a chance to be a mother, and I wasn't going to have a chance to live out a big part of my idea of what it meant to be the right kind of person, I found myself remembering a conversation I had had with my priest many years ago. And he had told me in a midnight mass one night that Mary is in every pew. And I think what he was trying to tell me in that moment is, you know, in any mass or in any room just like this, someone is celebrating a birth. Someone is mourning a loss. And someone is plotting movement to make the world a better place. And I think as I was sitting there in that moment, I started to feel something different than the pressure of unending loneliness. I started to feel connected to Monet as an artist, maybe to every other artist, maybe to any other person who was suffering some kind of loss, and maybe in a very beginning way to the artist inside of me. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this story Because I wonder if all of us haven't experienced some kind of loss, if all of us aren't in some way between something we thought we were and something we might want to be. And I just wanted to make room in the conversation for a really honest moment of yearning. What's in your heart? What is it that you would like to make room for today?
And just pause a little bit. Take that in. Take that beautiful question in. Because being an artist is an act of defiance. Being an artist is an act of optimism. Being an artist is to be generative in the face of suffering. Being an artist is to be about spreading joy in this world. Being an artist is about realizing that we are co-creating with the universe the future that we desire in our hearts. We've had so much sorrow in our remarks today to remind us that being human, being an artist, is about embracing all of that and still defiantly going forward as human beings. So how do we live life as a creative act? And I'd like to get a little concrete about this. Actually, can I do that right after? You know, making some get of it. The first starts by you actually believing you're an artist, because you cannot show up in the world unless you believe you are that human. You have to find that inner smile, that inner energy, that's something that you know that other people don't quite are in on the secret yet, where your creativity comes from. Then you have to learn to breathe in art and exhale hope. I don't know how many of you have been to Montgomery, Alabama, to the lynching memorial. This is the work of attorney and social rights activist Ryan Stevenson as artist, architect Michael Murphy as artists, and their teams acknowledging the horrific history of this country. That's why them stand here in the middle of this art, and you look, and each one of these represents a county and all the peoples on record who were lynched in a given county. It takes all that suffering, all that year, and makes us be accountable for what has happened. And let me aim just a little bit further away. This is Michael Murphy and his team's work. MLK, the Embrace. This is a 50-foot statue. We have to inhale art so that we can exhale hope. And when we do, and do it well, we start to get art as a daily dose. We start to practice this in Susan and Ivy's book, which you definitely need, Your Brain on Art. This is not a paid endorsement. We love you, Ivy and Susan. But it will, as you read the pages, remind you of why we are on this planet. My husband and I, and we have some dear friends, Amanda and Espen, we read that book together. It was part of a book club. And then we committed to do art night. And so we get together as friends to do ceramics, to paint, to do photography, to write, to do poetry. Just putting it on your calendar and making time for it changes how you consume the world around you. Once it's become a daily practice, you begin to notice you're noticing. You start to notice, well, should I be taking in all of that horrific media, or perhaps some literature would be a better choice? Should I do the last 7 pages of that PowerPoint, or perhaps dinner with friends as a more appropriate choice? That notice you're noticing as part of being an artist. It's about walking through the world awake to the invitations to be fully human. Now, some of you, I think, are probably like, wow, this is getting very theoretic, very cosmic. That boy's from California. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Let me get kind of pragmatic about this, which is this idea that we make the world our studio. And for me, that starts with carry your favorite pen everywhere. Because you, armed with your pen that you love, I recommend this Japanese pen, really, really mild made, are always ready to jot down your ideas, your sketches. When you do that, you graduate to carrying a whole kit of things: paint, scissors, Post-it notes, brush pens, watercolors. Why this is important, and I'm asking you to choose the tools of your profession. And I'm not upset. I am obsessive with this. I'm not saying you have to get this. I'm saying, do you carry your tools of creativity everywhere you go? Do you carry your tools of imagination everywhere you go? Do you take the time to pack in your bag or your backpack the things you need to be creative anywhere? Because if you don't have it, you don't draw it. If you don't have it, you don't make it. If you don't bring it with you, you cannot use it. Okay, let's see. What else is in the toolkit? Okay, so once you have your favorite pen, you have your toolkit with you, then you start to be concerned with like the immediate environment around you. And, artists are people who can find beauty anywhere. We can be walking down the street in the literally dog shitty streets of New York, and we find that one flower making its way through the crack in the sidewalk, and we stop and we witness the miracle of that. When that doesn't happen for me, I just have this portable incense that I bring. You just light it, you put it out, you can make almost any bad thing go away. I'm the Martha Stewart of creativity. If you do this right, you take the wall right in front of you, where you sit all day doing your Zooms, and you make that an inspiration board so that when you're not looking at the Zoom, you're looking at the things you love and adore, and you change that thing out every day. The book in your pocket. So what are you carrying in your pocket everywhere you go? So in those interstitial moments where you have that 10 minutes, why don't we always just consume some art? If you haven't read Kate Tempest's book, this book is extraordinary. Favorite notebook. This is my favorite notebook for 30 years. Again, I'm not suggesting you have to buy this notebook. What I'm just saying is, if you're not waking up every morning and journaling, if you're not pouring your dreams on paper, if you're not writing down your crazy ideas, if you don't have your business plans and capturing them, you cannot make them real. Let's see. Camera. Okay, let's see. How does this work? You gotta really bring it everywhere with you, I think. And of course, we all have a camera everywhere. The point of that is, are you awake to really seeing the world and what the world is presenting you? Some of you have been in meetings with me and we'll be working a problem, or we'll be working an idea, and we'll be generating ideas. And one comment I often get is, wow, you have so many ideas. They're just popping out of your mind. And it's like, no. I'm really disciplined about capturing inspiration, filing it away, storing it away, being super organized, so that any situation I'm in, I'm actually drawing on thousands of inspirations. That's where you need to capture it as you go. Okay. When you really, really do this right, you actually literally build yourself a studio. That might be some corner of your house, that tiny little apartment right next to the window right there. Or maybe you're luckier and you have a little bit more space where you can build an actual studio to create. But you need a studio. You need a place to do your thinking. You need a place to do your dreaming. You need a place to try things out and get messy and hide from people while you work out the details of your dream. You know, I have a dear friend, Rachel Levin, who leads a foundation, and one of her core tenets of her culture is start with poetry. So if you're on a Zoom meeting with Rachel, she starts with poetry. And when I first started this practice, it's like, that is ridiculous. Who has time for this? Who has time for this? Her team, 30 meetings a week, that's 30 poems. What is your life like enriched by 30 more poems in a week? Dealing with hope, dealing with ambiguity, dealing with tough problems, dealing with philosophy, it's all captured in the poetry. Let me just leave you with a few final thoughts, because when you take this world and you bend this studio, when you're on the way to the subway, that's a moment of beauty and art. When you're on the way to your next meeting, take a moment to find that flower coming up through the sidewalk, and then breathe and forgive yourself and love in on yourself as an artist. I have a dear artist friend back home, and he was showing me his works and the history of his works. And his works, he's charcoal and pastel drawing, and his work started this big with something beautiful, and then this big, and then this big, and then this big. And these paintings are really about his dream, about who he wants to become and what he wants to be. And now these paintings and sketchings are 4 foot by 6 feet. And we had this beautiful discussion, which is, can you just take your painting as your canvas and now make your life as your canvas? Take that hope 2 inches by 2 inches by 2 inches out into the world until the entire world becomes your canvas. Why I wanted to do this section is we mystify art as if it's some universe-driven thing that's understandable, when in fact it just comes down to some basic daily habits. I'm not saying these habits have to be your habits. What I'm encouraging you is to deeply, personally invent your own. Because, think about this for a second. If we are all this, meaning we've done all of those habits, that's when we are all indeed artists. Where we can live our life as a creative act, and then more importantly, defy the gravity of what is to make way for what deserves to be. In this page, which the mermaid will demonstrate, on those at home, you also have this as a PDF. The creative principles are captured here. That wall I was talking about, 4 feet in front of your face, pin this up when you go home today. And then take a look at this, living these principles and setting intentions. We're not going to have enough time to actually do this work together today, but basically it takes every one of those principles and just says, hey, do I never do this? Do I often do this? So believe you're an artist. Well, I know I never do that. Or yeah, I often do that. Or yes, I always do that. Well, fill out that bubble. What's one step more I could do today to live that principle? Maybe just buy your favorite pet. When you go home, or wherever is your next stop, or maybe you actually are at home if you're on live stream, take a moment to fill this out, because this breaks down what it means to be an artist in very, very easy terms. Fill this out every week, over 52 weeks in a year, and suddenly you live into the artist you were born to be. And why is that so important? You know, hey neighbor, how are you doing in this fine polycrisis? We require here in this country, but maybe across the world, what we are calling a new moral imagination. So it's not just a creativity. It's moral in the sense of what deserves to be. What do we hold will happen. And if you think about America right now, we have obviously a lot of very important battles about our history as a country. And we have a toxic political environment about what's going on, and we kind of move the deadline between the two parties of a division. But that future, that wide, expansive future, we're doing remarkably little work as a people to invent it. And I know we have lots of people trying to pull around the world. Maybe this is also true of where you live. We have abdicated the future to a feud about the present, rather than summoning our deepest belief about what could be. So the three of us, and there were many people in this room, and some people joined on live stream, there were about 30 of us that gathered for a little creativity experiment a few weeks ago. Journalists as artists, architect as artists, public service as artists, entrepreneurs as artists, and then there were painters and sculptors, museum leaders as artists. And we sat in our studio together, and we, by metaphor, thought about this world that we live in and how barren the trees of this world have become. Just naked in the branches, barren, no fruit. And if you think about that as a metaphor and you put all these artists to work, what would you do where we are, where we live, this country, to revive a strong sense of town and community, a joyous life, a vibrant democracy, and making of a regenerative planet? And you give people things to think about, places to mark their ideas, and they start literally populating each of these with their ideas. We could do this with citizens. We could do this to engage people. We could bring art into schools. We could go deeper into our town squares, revisit our histories in a bolder way to invent our futures. In the span of a day, the number of new leaves on these trees were profound, and it was an extraordinary shared experience of artists. But here's the other thing that was true. To have strong leaves, to have strong initiatives, to have good things in the world, you also have to have vibrant trunks and amazingly deep roots. And here we had fewer ideas, except the idea that this thing we all have, our shared, innate, biologically true talent of being human, taking in the world fully, and exhaling the hope to build the next America. That's what we have in common, and those are the roots, and those are the trunks. So I asked you just to think, when you pick up that pen and you make the kit and you make the world your studio, you can engage in these kinds of questions with fellow citizens in a way that we can dream more than just what we have today. This can indeed be a positive sum world.
Thank you, Keith. You know, like every one of you, I was born with the innate capacity to witness and experience art. And I, through the traumas and challenges of my life, took a bit of a detour in terms of the closeness of my relationship with my most creative self. I think I worried for a long time in my life that I'd gotten so distant from her that she would never forgive me. But over the last year, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on how I want my life to be and what it really means to be a human being. And I've been reconnecting with her. And I gotta tell you, she's not like some traumatized child, you know, who's struggling to forgive me. She's really powerful beyond measure. And in fact, she's the one who's been saving me all along. Here's the thing. I think if we are truly going to create a world in which we can all be fully part of it, in which we can all live into our fullest selves, it's going to require our deepest vulnerability and our towering strength. I no longer want to believe in a world where that artistry is reserved for just a few. I want to work together with the artist in every one of you to build a world in which we can all heal, grow, thrive, and flourish. I think that's what Keith's standing in. I know that's what Josh's standing in too. So as we close today, we want to close with just a final meditation. So, let's close our eyes. Now together, take a long, slow, deep breath in, and a long, slow, deep breath out. With your next breath, imagine soft, warm sunlight filling your lungs, then radiating out as you exhale, spreading its sparkling golden light as far as your imagination can stretch. Warm light in, golden light out. Let's keep breathing slowly and deeply. Walk with me. See before you a long path. Ahead, you'll notice a stream gently flowing. Maybe you want to stand in it, bare feet sinking into the slick mud. Or lay down and let yourself float in that cool, peaceful water. Feel it all around you. The mud and the rocks, the water, the air, the sunlight. Feel every note of the cello melting into every sensation you're experiencing, becoming every cell in your body. Feel your body float to the rhythm of the water, the fullness of your breath, and the sound of the cello. Welcome yourself home. Home to the creativity that lives inside you, that is always here for you. Your innate source of infinite joy, compassion, and healing. Take another deep breath and know what you have known all along, that this is what makes us human. Our ability to tap into this river of creativity, to experience the mystery of consciousness in our bodies, through our own creative acts and those of others. A connection so deep that we know we're never alone. Our creativity is the seat of our connection with people and the planet. Who first witnessed the artist in you? Who stood with you on the banks of this river? See that moment now. No matter what else happened, that creative spark still lives within you. It's been here all along, especially when you needed it most. Whatever obstacles have separated you from your creativity, see them floating away now. How would you be living differently if you were to speak these words every day? I am an artist. My life is a creative act. We are all artists because every life is a creative.